Hi, this is Dimitri Dimitriou, Chief Executive of ImmuPharma PLC, a biotech company listed in London and also Brussels on Euronext Growth. And this is a short update on the financial results which we put out this morning. And this includes also an update of the R&D pipeline. So unless there are any questions, I would like to give a brief summary as to where we are compared to last interviews, and based on the results, which are the recap of last year, not this year. Obviously, it includes this year's updates. So the major events of last year was the culmination of our efforts in discussions to close a corporate deal with a US company called Avian Pharmaceuticals, which is a US specialty pharma company, which is now responsible for developing a lead drug for lupus until the end, and also commercializing it in the US. So the deal includes not only the financial support for the completion of the next phase 3, but also milestone payments and royalties later on future sales. So from us, the great thing that we have a partnership with the US company is fantastic, because the US is the biggest market in the world, so therefore that is taken care of. Now that leaves the rest of the world free for ImmuPharma to work with other licensees. And in fact, we are in discussions with a number of companies on this front. In addition to Lupus and the license deal which we have, as I explained earlier, which is proceeding, by the way, this year towards the filing of the next protocol of the phase 3 with the FDA, with a view of starting the next phase 3 later on this year, before the end of the year. I can't predict exactly which month, but it would be hopefully before the end of the year. We have also announced new projects in the pipeline, which we have been working on for a while now, actually, and that includes now some new areas for us, which is anti-infectives. And anti-infectives, as we have all seen recently because of the coronavirus crisis, which I'm sure everybody talks about, is an area which is not only unmet, but it's one of the biggest dangers to humanity and society, and the way that humans have evolved over so many thousands of years. The difficulty is that we have, as an industry, developed quite a few antibiotics over the last few decades. There have not been so many new developments recently, but since the onset, or rather the discovery, development, and commercialization of penicillin, infections used to kill many, many people. So we know that infections are dangerous. And the world has gone through many crises which we know, and I guess quite a few which we don't know, like the plague in Europe in the Middle Ages, which killed a lot of the population. And then more recently, the Spanish flu, and then a bit more recently, things which we saw in the news a few years ago, like SARS. And of course, the new coronavirus highlights the difficulty in being able to work and live and continue our society, a supply chain, and everything which we do in our lives, facing these dangerous microbes. And what we have to keep in mind is that this is one virus, which obviously is not a pleasant thing to catch, and it has created a huge upheaval in our economy on a global scale. People in our generation have never seen this before. Nevertheless, this is only one kind of virus, and there are many, many possible other types of viruses and bacteria and fungi which can infect humanity. And therefore, for us, anti-infectives is an area where we feel, as a company, because we should go into. But more importantly, the reason for that is that we have some clever technologies which we feel would be very interesting in terms of meeting some of these unmet needs. So, excuse me, in anti-infectives, there are 3 areas based on the organisms which you hoping to attack. And these fall in the categories of bacteria, viruses, and fungi. So a fungal infection is not the same as a bacterial infection, which is not the same as a viral infection. And all of them are infections. But antibiotics, for example, and I don't know if many people realize this, but antibiotics kill bacteria, but not viruses and not fungi. And antivirals, which aren't so many, and unfortunately there isn't globally what is really missing, like a broad spectrum antiviral that everybody takes and hopefully kills the viruses. So antivirals would kill viruses, but not bacteria and fungi. And equally, antifungals would kill fungi, but not bacteria and viruses. So because these organisms are different, these are the three different areas. So in one of our subsidiaries in Bordeaux in France, which is called Eureka for pharmaceuticals, we have been working on a patented, very clever technology of modifying human peptides and possibly any other peptides which we can mimic in a special way to make it stable, make it synthetically from parts which are not really amino acids. So it looks chemically the same, but it's not exactly the same, but this makes it stable. And it can give it a longer half-life, but we can also make small modifications to make it better. So we have two new projects which we believe are fairly low-hanging fruit from the point of view that they are existing known drugs, medicines which have been around for a while, which are very efficacious but have some issues. So one of them is a product called amphotericin B. Amphotericin B is probably the world's leading antifungal agent. And it is one of the agents of choice if you have a serious fungal infection. But nevertheless, it does have some side effects which are not so pleasant. And what we have done, hopefully within our technology, or using our technology, is to come up with a formulation which will be hopefully a lot more safe. And the other area which is similar in concept with this one is in the area of metabolism. We have developed an analog of a product called Glucagon. Glucagon is a rescue therapy in diabetes patients who have taken possibly too much insulin, then the blood sugar went down very quickly. So that is very dangerous. And the rescue therapy is called Glucagon. Now, there are different formulations, but the common one is one which requires a lot of work, which must be done very urgently, sometimes at home by the patient or the family member who is with them to try to dissolve it, shake it, inject it, and sometimes it doesn't work so well. So that is a known issue. And I think this part is what makes us come up with something which we think is now very, very soluble, which could be in a pre-filled syringe and could also work in an insulin pump. So some people with diabetes have pumps which inject insulin at the right time in the blood. So we believe that we could come up with a better formulation of glucagon. Now, both glucagon and amphotericin B would be low-hanging fruit, which I explained to us, or short-term market opportunities, if you want to put it in a better business terminology, from the point of view that they should not require the full development plan because they're already on the market, the known products, but nevertheless, we have a formulation which is better. So that means that we should be able to go into the market if we prove bioequivalence, meaning that they are as equivalent as the other one, which is on the market in the blood fairly quickly, avoiding the usual multi-development phases of phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. So with a bioequivalent study and some extra small studies, we should be able to get onto the market. So they could be launched in 2 years. It's difficult to predict without more data, but nevertheless, this for us is exciting because it brings us products which are close to market. And on the antifungal side, amphotericin B ticks the fungal infection area. For the bacterial infections, with our technology, again, from a subsidiary, Eureka Pharma, which I mentioned earlier, we are working on some novel molecules which can be very interesting antibacterial agents. And we have had in the pipeline for some time now, even though we hadn't progressed it because there wasn't such a big need for infections until more recently, a product which is a peptide for severe infections, which we were targeting. For example, there is one which is seriously available in hospitals, and it is resistant. It is called MRSA, that is methicillin-resistant Staphylococcus aureus. So if you catch that, there is a quite a high chance you will die, and there aren't many products for that because it's resistant. So we have been developing our drug, or even at a very early stage chemically, a few years back, and then we put the program on pause because we had many other things on our plate, but now we have decided to reactivate it. The other one, which is interesting, especially for the viral angle, and we have more than one, but we cannot disclose anymore at the moment. So the one which we talked about is that we are part of a consortium which includes a few other companies, mostly in France, where we are targeting killing viruses, i.e. developing new medicines, but with a very complicated process which is difficult to explain to now, but there is some information, and there will be more on our website. So what we'll be doing there is to try to effectively block the virus entries into cells. So this is a new project which tackles antivirals. So with excuse me. So with these three areas of anti-infectives, metabolism, we have cancer as we had in the past, and again the cancer area is not one of our core expertise, but nevertheless we think the product is very interesting. That's why we put it already in human trials in cancer patients. We did 2 phase 1 studies a few years back. It has utility in other indications which we are considering to pursue further. So that I think now creates for ImmuPharma a pipeline which is quite full, and certainly I think with our resources and for our size, our achievement has been very pleasing. So we are delighted and excited about the future. Okay,
it's also a long, complicated story, of course, for me. Do you expect to have some medicines finished this year or next year? It's like commercial?
You mean ready to sell in the market?
Yeah.
Not this year, probably the year after, if we are lucky. And these would be the two which I mentioned, which are the reformulations of existing technologies. Lupus, or probably 1 year after. I mean, that would be the big one for lupus. Okay. For the viruses, we don't know, because this is an area where we're doing some tests now, which could lead to interesting results. We don't know yet how things will go, but that could be something which can move fast. But currently, it's very difficult to predict what and where and when.
And I see in the press paper, I see the cash position decreased to 1.4 million pounds. Pounds. Will there more cash coming in this year?
Well, actually, we announced a few days ago a new financing from one of our existing shareholders and funders, which is called Lansted. Yeah. And this is not exactly showing, it can't really show on our books as well as the past one, because the way that this investment works is that we issue the shares, but then we put the monies into an escrow account, which is kind of controlled. And then this is released by Lansted to ImmuPharma on a monthly basis, pro rata, but depending on the share price. So this is not an equity line. People sometimes confuse it with an equity line. It has nothing to do with an equity line. It's actually a straight issue of shares, but the proceeds come to us over the period of time which we have announced. I think in the past one was 24 months on a monthly basis, depending on the share price. So if the share price performs well, then every month we'll be getting more. So this is something which we don't have already in the bank because it comes on a monthly basis. And the first one started, I think, in June last year. So we still have more than a year to go. And the new one starts now in the summer. So that will be for another 2 years. So even though we don't have the cash in the bank, it is something which we get on a regular basis.
Okay. And about the corona, of course, you already explained it, I think. Do you expect to maybe produce a medicine or a vaccine for it, or just to develop?
Not a vaccine, but we have now some internal tests which we need to see how they work out before we can say more information. So I wish I could say some more details, but I can't at the moment because we don't even know ourselves. But there are some projects which will be very exciting. This is in addition to the one which we have announced, which is part of a consortium with a few other companies developing different parts of a technology which would be a very clever antiviral, not a vaccine.
Okay.
There are quite a few companies now trying to work on vaccines. I hope, for the sake of all of us, that something does come up.
Yeah.
I'm not a vaccine expert and I can't say what and where. The difficulty with this particular virus is that it is an RNA virus. I know that's quite biological and chemical, so most people don't think of these things. I mean, if somebody's interested, they can easily Google it. So we all know about DNA. So DNA is what we have in all our cells, and actually all the plants and the trees and animals, everything on Earth has DNA. And the DNA is a genetic information of how we are built. So for example, if you take a human baby, it starts from two cells, right? The mother and the father. So the DNA in the cells, it's only one cell from each, but the DNA has all the information for the rest of it to grow on its own. When you take a huge tree, it starts from a tiny seed. I mean, the seed is like this, right? It's a tiny thing, but that has all the DNA it needs. It doesn't need anything else except water and oxygen, carbon dioxide, everything else which it finds.
Yeah.
So most of the viruses carry inside DNA. So if you want to put it very simply, it's like a ball with the membrane and things outside, but inside is a genetic information. And viruses inject that into a human cell, and then that is used to take over the cell machinery to basically make, like a photocopy makes many copies. So the human body specifically is very good at realizing parts of DNA which are broken or somehow damaged to kill them, get rid of them, because that is how we can survive cancer and mutations and killing of different parts of our cells. So because our cells have DNA, we have the mechanisms to destroy damaged DNA. Coronavirus is not a DNA virus, it's an RNA virus. The RNA is the copying machine which makes copy of the DNA. And because the COVID-19 is not a DNA virus, it is difficult for the human body to create immunity because it's an RNA virus. And there's no equivalent such good mechanism in the human body of coming up with immunity against damaged RNA and not DNA. So that is also why we see that maybe people who passed it also don't have real immunity. So because of that, I think there are complications with creating a right vaccine. I think some companies have interesting technologies, and yeah, I hope something works. The only thing with the vaccinations is that they're very, very specific. And every year we know that there is an influenza vaccination, and some people take it, some people don't take it. But that is not good enough for the influenza the year after, because a slight mutation makes it not work. So it has to be a vaccine which would work even if the virus mutates a little bit, and it must be safe. But I have never seen humanity work in such a coordinated fashion in my lifetime. And I'm sure things happened in the past, but now the world is connected through the internet and everything else which we have. So people can easily work together even though they're in other countries and different time zones. So the cooperation between biotech companies, pharma companies, etc., I have seen is absolutely amazing. So I'll be very surprised if things don't come up. And we are one of the companies only which is trying to make a difference.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, let's hope there will be a solution for it. Of course, I don't have questions anymore. In the past, we had already a big interview, so
we did indeed.
I will let you know if I got questions later.
Indeed.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.